You saw we got a response. Yeah, I saw that was a good, very, very good job. Yeah, so hopefully they'll get on it and then send us some lines. And you know, it's easy for you to think yeah, I was surprised. I saw that. I'll tell you, 2 days after, it's just like a regular mask. 2 days after the fire, Altadena was ready to go out there and start clearing. I didn't see that. There's 7 people on the live stream. So actually,
Testing, 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 testing. If we can have everybody take a seat, we're going to get started. Tall people in the back, go ahead and have a seat. Yes, that's you, Matt, Bob.
Am I on? Okay. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to those of you who are on the live stream. We've got, Ashley, how many? We have about 75 members also attending via live stream. So welcome to all of you to our town hall. Craig and I have some updates for all of you, and then we're going to take as much time as we need to answer questions both on the live stream and here in the room. So with that, let me start. Speaking of communications like this, one thing you hopefully have noticed is that we have many modalities of communicating with our members right now in this situation where we can't physically get together. One that just launched this week that I hope you've availed yourself of is right on the home page of the website, and that's our new FAQ. The board has collaborated on this. The FAQ document will be updated frequently. We hope at least once a week. We are looking, when we get questions from members or we realize there are things that members are concerned about, we're adding those questions to the FAQ. And as answers change from I don't know to absolutely, we're doing this, we'll add that too. So please make sure you look at that. Also, email blasts. I've been trying to send out email blasts to you with updates as well, about once a week. I'm behind this week. And you've been getting emails almost every day from club management on announcements. And then, of course, the town halls, like today. Our next one after today will, of course, be our annual meeting on the 23rd of March at the Elks Lodge at 4 o'clock? 4 o'clock, okay. One thing I would ask and encourage you to do is please make sure that you look at the communications that are going out to all of you. One thing I'm starting to find now several weeks into this horrible experience that we're going through together, I'm starting to see questions that we've already provided answers to in the FAQs or in some of our email updates. So take a minute. You might find great information has already been put out there for you before you send emails to Craig or to me or to the board or to other members. And lastly, just a personal request. And if I'm out of line, I apologize. But I know there's been a lot of emailing amongst our members, which is great. Sometimes our board is included. Sometimes we're not. We'd sure like to be a part of you in your communications as well. We're all a family here. And, sometimes we can add to the conversation. Sometimes not. But I would just ask if you're sending mass emails out, I've seen some 40, 50, 70 members. Gosh, you've got all our emails too. Please include us. So that's really that on the communication side. And by the way, if you all have another modality of communication that we aren't doing, please let us know, because this is all we know how to do. And if there's still other things that we can do to help you all be better informed, please let us know, because we are exercising all the options that we're aware of. So with that, Craig, can you give us an update on a couple of topics?
Sure. Thank you, Kelly. So I'm going to start by talking about the condition of the property, condition of the club. For those of you who haven't been there in the last week, we have now fenced off the member parking lot. So before you could drive down to the member parking lot to take a look at the club, that's now fenced off and gated off and locked up to try and keep folks out. We had a couple people wander onto the property, so we thought it was best to get that done sooner than later. The upper parking lot, which is still being used by Southern California Edison through May, they have told us that they're going to be installing fencing up there, so we haven't done anything, but we haven't seen that happen yet. They are done with the heavy equipment in our upper parking lot. They're mostly going to use it for trailers and communication, and considering setting up a kind of a temp office for neighborhood communication. So if folks want to come by and talk to the Edison folks, they'll have offices in our parking lot to be able to do that. Eventually, they'd like to set up a permanent office in Altadena, at least for, I don't know, the foreseeable future, I would think, until Altadena gets rebuilt. So that's the first thing on fencing. As far as electric, we did have electric restored to the pro shop, the courts 1 through 5. We don't have power to courts 6 and 7 yet. We don't have power to the pool yet. So we do have a proposal to install temporary power to the pool area, which we're going to move on pretty quickly. At some point when we deem it's appropriate, we will start the cleanup procedures at the club, which would entail emptying the pool, replastering the pool, making sure the equipment's operational, cleaning up the courts, and getting the club ready for visitors, for member usage. That is yet to be determined, and that's probably the biggest question mark that we're facing right now, is when will it be safe to come back to the club. Gas and water will be required also before we get the pool up and operational. The gas line will have to be rerouted from where it was, which was kind of the front of the clubhouse area. And the water, we know that we have some broken pipes, that when the water was turned on, it was flooding the fitness center. It wasn't bad enough that the fitness center had this much water in it previously. Now it's got about that much water inside it. It's holding. The fitness center is a small pool, but unfortunately, because it's a pool of water, it's starting to develop mold. So we'll have to determine, once we get to the point of demolition and removal of materials, we'll have to see if any of the equipment in the fitness center will be usable again. But it is growing mold on the feet of the fitness center equipment, on the running area of the treadmills. So I think all the electronic equipment, all the treadmills, and the ellipticals, and the step mill, and the bicycles are probably going to be unusable in the future, but all the other strength training equipment, the dumbbells and things, hopefully we'll be able to remove that stuff from the area and set up a temporary fitness center somewhere else, similar to what we did during COVID, possibly on the pool deck or elsewhere at the club. So that's electric, gas, water, temp fencing. As far as the demolition and the status of the demolition, we have gotten 3 bids on what it would cost to do the demo work on the club. They did skip by us for phase 1, the hazardous waste removal, because there was a lot of walls and steel beams and chimneys and such still standing at the club, so they were afraid to go traipsing through the burned out clubhouse debris area, so they've pushed that off to phase 2. We have gotten bids for the debris removal during the phase 2 process. We are hoping, based on an email we had from the supervisor's office today, that the debris removal could potentially be expedited by the Public Works and the Army Corps of Engineers, so that we don't have to actually go beyond our insured $250,000 of club funds for debris removal. So hopefully it won't cost the club any money if we can get the county moving on this pretty quickly. I did want to talk about Reciprocity at other clubs, and some of you guys have told me you're starting to take advantage of the Reciprocity, which is great. You've also told me that the other clubs have been extremely warm and welcoming to our Altadena members, which is fantastic to hear. But we do have Reciprocity at 6 clubs currently, 4 and 2 to be determined. University Club has been great, and they're open for lunch 5 days a week and dinner on Thursdays. And they have been welcoming to our members. We do have to pay with a credit card when we're there. They do have a comedy night coming up on March 5th, which I believe is this Wednesday, that they have space for if anybody's interested. It's only $25, and it's a buffet and a comedy night. So it's a deal if anybody's interested in going to the University Club. The Athenaeum has allowed us to use their club for both lunch and dinner, also paying with a credit card. And they have a Ramey wine dinner coming up on Friday, March the 14th. The Annandale is allowing our use for tennis and dining, and if you saw the email, they're only allowing 12 of our members to come at a time, not because our members are rowdy, but because they have limited space. Or maybe it's because our members are rowdy, and they have limited space. So only 12 members at a time coming to Annandale. But I don't know, has anybody taken advantage of the open tennis? I believe it started March 1st, which would have been yesterday. Anybody been up to Annandale for tennis yet? Okay, hopefully you guys will take advantage of that. Oakmont has also been very welcoming to us. This Tuesday night, they're opening up their dining room. They typically don't serve dinner on Tuesdays. They're opening up their dining room and making it an Altadena night. So if you're looking for a place to dine, if you want to check out another club and see how their food and beverage service operates, this Tuesday night, there's still space available. I think we've got about 70 of our members already signed up, and they can probably take well over 100. So if you get a chance, go Tuesday night to Oakmont. They also have a magic night that we're going to do there on March the 22nd, where they're just opening up their ballroom to our magicians, John George and folks. And they're also providing a buffet for Altadena members, so you can either sign up for the buffet and magic, or you can sign up for just magic, either one, and I believe the reservations go through Ashley for that event. Some of our members were at Jonathan Club today. They had a community picnic. We're still working with them to try and find out how they're going to help us in Reciprocity. We know they will allow dining, and we're trying to work through those details, but we've also asked them for use of their pool area, their fitness center, special events. So we're hoping to hear back from them over the course of this next week. And then we just heard back from San Gabriel today, and they're going to allow us lunch and dinner privileges at San Gabriel, but they're working out the details this week, so we'll find out more. So at some Reciprocity, at some clubs, you have to pay with a credit card, and in other situations, they're going to allow member charges. So we're trying to work through all those details. We did have one question that came in advance about pickleball, and is there a possibility that we can get pickleball at any of these clubs? Jonathan Club has an indoor gym, and we've asked them. They have currently one pickleball court in their indoor gym, but they're going to restripe it in the near future for multiple pickleball courts. So I've asked them if when they do that, there's a possibility that we might be able to get access to their pickleball courts. The other option for pickleball is at Mayfield Senior School. Currently, Paul is teaching Tennis 101 from 1 o'clock to 2:30 on one of the courts at Mayfield, and they have told us, and we're double checking with their administration, but we think we'll have access to 2 pickleball courts either before Paul's 1 o'clock class or after Paul's 1 o'clock class. So either from 2:30 to 4 or 4:30, or maybe from 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock for a drop-in pickleball or some kind of group pickleball. I've also talked to Ken, one of the pickleball instructors, and if anybody's interested in lessons or such with Ken, I can set you up with that. So let us know if that's something you guys are interested in. As far as other upcoming events that we've got going on, every other Monday we have Mindful Mondays, which is our yoga classes that we're doing virtually. Jen Webster is the instructor. We started this past Monday, so tomorrow we'll be off, and then we'll be back on next Monday. We had our first walking club at the Rose Bowl this Saturday. We had some members, we had some dogs. Our next walking club at the Rose Bowl is on Tuesday, March 11th at 11 o'clock. We have a Foothill Family Wellness Workshop, which is going to take place at Oakmont on Tuesday, March 11th at 6 p.m., and that's for the whole family. For folks that just need some additional help, a nice group to gather in there, kind of a wellness approach to things. We have cotillions starting up again at the University Club this coming Thursday, March 13th, next Thursday, March 13th. We have a park play date coming up on March 15th at Brookside, time to be determined. Our annual meeting on March 23rd. We have a food tour we're doing, the Downtown Arts District, on March 30th from 11 to 2:30. We have go-karts that we're going to do at Mayfield, and it looks like April 6th is the tentative date. Once again, the administration at Mayfield just has to give us the green light. And then we get to Easter, and the University Club is open to accepting about 100 to 150 of our members for their Easter brunch. We're checking with all the other clubs to see if they have availability for Easter brunch, because it's such a big event for our club. And then in the afternoon, we're going to do an egg hunt at Mayfield from 2 to 4 o'clock for both kids and adults. So as you can see, we're trying to get a lot of different events out to you guys, trying to keep you involved, trying to keep you engaged, trying to maintain the community. So that's what we've got going, Reciprocity and upcoming events. I also wanted to remind everybody that committee interest forms, if you're interested in joining a committee, a lot of our committees are getting back up and operational. We set the deadline of March 3rd, which is tomorrow, so hopefully if you're interested, you can get a committee form in, just email it to me. I've got a list. We've got about 20 to 25 people who've already expressed interest in committees, which is great, especially under these circumstances. One more thing I wanted to talk about, which is the Employee Benevolence Fund. A lot of you guys have been extremely gracious and generous with your dollars in donating to the Employee Benevolence Fund. We already have raised close to $44,000 for our employees. We have 3 staff, Chad, Diane, and Ashley, working with one of our board members, Valère, to try to determine the best means of distribution and how to fairly distribute it to the employees who are in need of that. We actually asked them to complete a needs assessment form, and we got about 30 of our employees who submitted that. So now it'll be a matter of them going through and figuring out how best to distribute those monies. I think that's all that I have for right now. I think that, as I said, the biggest question mark in terms of when we can get back on the club will be based on what's happening at the golf course. And I don't know if anybody's been by the golf course lately, but where their footprint was originally on just the driving range, they have now shifted their footprint west, and they have basically cleared out a couple of their fairways. And I think it's probably the number 1 fairway, which is probably closest to us, which is directly south of courts 4 and 5. So they're going to be using that area, it appears, for their debris storage and removal, and it will yet to be determined when it's deemed safe for us to go back to the club if that's going on there. Chris, did you have a question or just?
I did. What do we know about that? I mean, we don't know about duration or how they're storing the materials. The reason why I'm asking is, let's say that we can get debris removed and we can start to use the tennis courts and pickleball courts. I'm sure a lot of us, if there's toxic chemicals right next to us that are sort of airborne,
The only information that I've heard for the live stream, Chris is asking if we had any information on how long or what's happening with the debris removal in terms of any information. What they've told us, what we've heard through their press conferences that they're holding every Monday, Catherine Barger's press conferences Monday at 4 o'clock, is they anticipate it will take through January of 2026 to complete the debris removal process for Altadena. So we're looking at potentially another 10 months or so before that's done. Nobody, and I don't even think they know, and it's kind of like early stages of COVID where nobody knew anything and everybody was just throwing stuff out and saw what stuck on the walls. I don't think anybody really knows how long it's going to be and exactly how damaging it could be to folks that are within 250 yards, which is what their recommended distance is from any sort of fire debris. You know, not only do we have to get our clubhouse cleared away and deal with the golf course, but we have a lot of neighbor homes that are within that 250-yard mark as well. So we're trying to, in a perfect world, try and get those folks to, thank you, we're trying to get those folks to try and get their houses cleared away as quickly as possible also. So I see the signs going up, and especially the houses on the north side of Mendocino, right across from our member parking lot. So I know they're in the queue for phase 2, which is great. The houses closer to Country Club Drive, where Sue Kim and Tom and Jacqueline and some of those houses on the west of our clubhouse, right near our portico share, I haven't seen the signs go up as quickly over on that area, but we're monitoring it and we're asking questions and we're just haven't had the answers yet. So that's all I have. Oh, we have another question.
Meeting with Catherine Barger, who's our supervisor, specifically around this because I used to work at the county around the contracting and subcontracting to do this to the EPA and to the Army Corps. There should be some very specific guidelines on how far that toxic debris should be from anybody or residences and others, and if you can be operational or not in duration of that. So you should definitely be proactive and not wait for press conferences and have a meeting immediately and talk to Catherine and get the Army Corps. I talked to the head of the Army Corps engineers a month ago. I would have asked them these questions if we didn't know that, but I think it's really important because absolutely no one's going to play tennis, I hope, next to debris or go swimming. So yes. I think they also would owe us something if we are unable to operate and they have a contract longer than that and we are ready to go. So I think it's probably would be a great thing to someone to take the lead on that.
Yeah. We did start a dialogue with the supervisor's office. As a matter of fact, we heard from them this morning as it relates to the debris removal at our club. Most of the press conference is dealing with residential. There's not a lot of discussion over businesses. So that's something that I've reached out to them and said, we need more information. We need to know what's happening with the businesses. Is it going to be residential removal first, plus schools, and then you're going to get to the businesses? So they actually connected us with the head of the Public Works, and so I hope to hear from him this week as far as the club, and then from there, that dialogue will continue, and absolutely we'll find out some more of that information. Claire Jerishow. The Claire Jerishow. We have a question in the back. Is it?
My understanding that waste is not hazardous. They were not using that for hazardous waste. Is that incorrect?
You're talking about the golf course? That has changed, and they are using it for both phase 1 and phase 2. So they will be. I think they anticipated 2 months for phase 1, but they are prepping for phase 2. So the hazardous material would be removed in phase 1. The fire debris material, which is still toxic, is part of the phase 2, and that's the stuff that's going to be within 100 feet of our court 4 and 5, potentially. All right, I'm going to turn it back over to Kelly for some additional updates.
Thank you. First, I want to admit 2 gaffes, 1 necessary, 1 unintentional. The reason why I'm sitting here as you all walked in, and I didn't greet a single one of you, is I've got a bad wheel. And I made it to 66 years old before I had a walker. but hopefully it's temporary. So I apologize. I didn't mean to be aloof as you all were coming in. My second gaffe, I have no excuse for it. That is, I failed to introduce my colleagues on the board who are all sitting in the first and second row. So I'm going to fix that gaffe right now. Yang Yu is here, our treasurer, Rebecca Stokes, Liam Lynch, our secretary, our immediate past president and current first vice president, Kathy Ergot, Valere Burns, Tom Myers, and Dan Sheehy, and hiding in the second row, Joe Montez. Very grateful to this board and also to our staff. Might as well acknowledge Diane and Chad and Ashley, along with Craig, who are keeping the heartbeat going on our club. Okay, so apologies out of the way. Let me talk about the money for a minute. It's on all of our minds, right, in a number of respects. We have been struggling as a board to develop with staff an interim financial plan. There are some challenges in figuring out a plan and a financial strategy because the goalposts right now we can't see. So the best approach we have taken, and this I think was confirmed just this last Thursday at our most recent of our 5th board meeting since the fire, or 6th? I think it's 5th. I can't even count anymore. We're meeting basically weekly right now, members. We decided that we have no other choice but to assume a financial scenario that is our current situation, where we have an unusable campus, where we have no use of the property, we have no income coming in from the use of the property. So we don't know how long that phase will be. Right now, having no choice otherwise, we're assuming, just for an initial budget purposes, that this situation will continue through the end of the fiscal year. That means until March 1st, 2026. Now, we are fervently hoping that's not the case, but we have to have some assumptions to create some kind of a budget and therefore some kind of a scenario. So we are trying very hard on this. We fully expect that before this fiscal year is up, the budget will be revised at least once, but it all depends on when we first see the goalpost that we're kicking towards. Then we can begin to have different assumptions and different financial projections. So it's a very difficult time right now in this early stage of the process. I want to emphasize that the board's decision to suspend member dues through the end of January does not, did I say June? January. I'm back in time. Yes, you're all late on your February and March dues. I'm so sorry. No, thank you, board. June. Our decision to suspend dues through the end of June does not mean to imply, members, that we are planning on reinstating some dues in July. We just don't have enough information yet. Again, we can't see the goalpost. So as soon as we have more information and we get closer to the month of July, I'm quite sure our next board, as soon as we have a clearer picture that the goalposts are not in July or August or September, whenever that is, then we'll be making a further decision on that. And I know I speak for the board when I say we pledge to you that as soon as we have an idea, we will give you as very much notice as we can. So that's that. Also, we have been asked by a couple of members, are we pursuing an SBA loan? The answer is yes. That has been on our radar pretty much since day 2 after the fire. The latest information we have from the FEMA/SBA is that our club as a nonprofit organization can borrow up to $2 million. The interest rate is 3.65, give or take 100th. The first year is no payments. The second year is interest only. And I understand there are some other deferrals that may possibly be involved. So the board has instructed staff to go ahead and make sure we have our application in before March 10th. And if it happens that we can borrow more than $2 million, that's great news. But right now, the information we have is $2 million. So, yeah, Chris?
Don't we have to pay that back, though?
The question is, don't we have to pay it back? Yes, we do have to pay it back. I think the expectation, Chris and members, is that we do not have between our insurance proceeds, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, the cash that we had set aside, our nest egg for the kitchen remodel project, that we don't have enough money to rebuild our clubhouse. anything close to what it was. So with that negative presumption, we're assuming that the SBA loan will be a necessity, and we're also assuming that that will be far better terms than any other loan we could get. That also, please don't misunderstand, members, that does not mean that's the only borrowing we may have to pursue. There will be a lot of discussion in the Finance Committee, among the board, among other volunteers who have volunteered to help with the Finance Committee planning of our reconstruction. There'll be much further study about what the total nut is going to be that we have to reach. But for right now, we're told that there's a March 10 deadline to apply for this money, and we don't want to miss out on such favorable terms. So I hope that answers the question, Chris. Yeah, it doesn't. Go ahead. Tell me how I missed it.
Well, so, I mean, it sounds like you're giving a $4,200 assessment per equity member in the future. So we are signing up to have an additional assessment, not including interest. But is that the way I understand it? If we borrow $2 million, we'll have to pay it back with interest. That will have to come back towards the equity members who will have to pay that in addition or as part of dues. Is that right?
The question is, do we have to pay back so much per member? And the answer is, of course. It's a loan, and we don't have enough money to rebuild the club. I don't think there is a single board member who has any belief that we have enough money between the insurance and our current cash in hand to rebuild the club. So the belief is very strongly that we're going to need to borrow some money. So yes, if we want to get our club back, we're all going to have some level of debt for some period of time. Now, the good news about the SBA loan is there's no prepayment penalty. So if we decide 6 months from now we don't want to draw on the loan at all, or we want to pay it back, go ahead, Liam.
Could be from operations. There could be other ways in which that money is repaid. It's not the baseline assumption is not that member dues go up by that amount, by that proportion. Now, there may be some proportion that does happen, but we will have operations. I mean, we will have other cash flows just as we had prior, right? So that's not the assumption that it goes straight to equity. Does that help?
There may also be a situation where once we get into the programming and visioning phase of the club and what we want our club to be in the future, that we may not need a 28,000 square foot club. We may decide on something smaller, in which case we may decide that what we have is actually enough to rebuild our club. So there's a lot of question marks still, but we want to at least line things up to put us in the best possible position.
Thank you, Liam. Dave Zamet. Just a quick question with regards to borrowing. Do the memberships have any say in with regards to whether we borrow or not? I mean, is that a membership vote, an ownership vote, or is that just up to the board?
Well, there's the technical answer and the practical answer. The technical answer is the Board of Governors has the authority to pursue the SBA loan. I don't remember any particular membership vote requirement on this. However, once we get further down the programming phase and we have a better idea of the concept and we have some kind of I think the architects call it an engineering estimate for some concept of the club, there will certainly indirectly be a decision that the members will have input into, which will, in the finances, will certainly play a role.
There's no prepayment penalty on the SBA loan, so we take it and we don't touch it in a year, we hand it back. No, I mean, there's $2 million isn't filling the gap. So borrowing $2 million, I think, the board could safely say, we'll borrow the money. It's cheap money right now. It's at least 400 basis points, 500 basis points below going rates. So I think the board is confident that we can say, let's take this money now if we qualify and we can get it, especially with the short timeline. If we were to take on any more debt that would burden the equity members, I firmly believe that we would be going to the membership to discuss that. I don't know, but it would be communicated. My expectation, if I was on the board still, would be to communicate that to the membership and to at least discuss what the future financial of the club is.
In relation to the cost, yes, if you get the money and we don't have to use it, it's most likely, if we're going to go with the same square footage, that we need money. And there should be a study of, if you bring the footage down and you'll save $1 million versus keeping it as is, and with the amenities that you have as far as utilizing these big ballrooms, that is an income to the club. If we don't get that income to the club, then the membership will have to pay. So there should be like a short paper about this, and to ease off the communication with everybody.
Right, you're absolutely on target, all of you. When we get to a little bit further down in this journey, and we have a better idea of what the costs are going to be and of the different scenarios for our new clubhouse, then that's something that we're all going to be discussing as a club. And we have this Restoration and Recovery Committee that we're going to talk about in a few minutes. We were very fortunate that we have had volunteers, in addition to our outstanding Finance Committee that Adoya Arudia heads. We also have had volunteers, I think at least 4 or 5, very impressive people in the financial and lending world who have also volunteered their expertise. So I fully expect that the Finance Committee will be augmented by a number of very fine people to develop financial scenarios that make sense, because it's not just the dues, it's the outside income, it's a lot of things. So it's just, that's the best we have right now, is to say there's a whole rainbow of opportunities or choices ahead of us. None of those are even close to being identified, let alone selected. It's the best we can do. So, great questions. Yes, sir.
What would the term of the SBA loan be? Is it
15 years.
15 years?
That's my understanding.
I might suggest, because again, this gentleman's statement of 4,200 a member, that we are always, to make sure, because I heard that, I said, oh my God, but if it's a 15-year loan, we might want to always present it as what it would be as a monthly cost, because that would be not negligible, but it's going to be a very small monthly cost for $2 million, and it wouldn't hurt if we had an idea, well, if we have to borrow $2 million, it's going to cost us $30 a month over a 15-year period. Or it's going to cost, so I think the number is going to show up very low as a monthly increase to dues. And I personally am worried that people will tend to start wanting to walk away. And so I think the number should always be reassuring and realistic. You got what I'm saying.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. If the number is accurate, and I haven't run this, if the $2 million divided by our equity members is 4,200, that divides out over 15 years to $23.33 a month. So, but again, yeah, it could be a lot of things. But again, I want to be careful. If we want the club back in the configuration that we currently have, well, until January, that we enjoyed, I don't think anybody believes that the $2 million will be enough. So just be very blunt, right? Okay, thank you. Very good points all. Okay, so that's as best as we've got for you on the financial front. Thank you for the great questions. Are there any questions in the virtual?
So one question is, has the board considered changing the bylaws and assessing equity members to fund the clubhouse rebuild rather than taking on debt? Well, our bylaws read that for assessing members, we have to have 100% approval of the voting members. So in theory, we're never going to be able to assess the members. We're never going to be able to get 100% to agree on anything. And we've talked to attorneys about changing our bylaws, and it's going to require 100% approval of the voting members to change the bylaw, asking for 100% approval of the voting members for an assessment. So some challenges there, so to answer that question.
Okay. The next topic I want to cover is an update on our insurance.
How that works and how much we have and where that money goes.
Bob, you're reading my mind. I'm just about to talk about it. Oh, no, I'll skip insurance. Who cares about insurance, right, Bob? All right, so just to recap on the insurance. We have $250,000 coverage for demolition. We have, I believe it's $13.5 million. By some calculations, it might be as high as $13,080,000, and then I thought there was plus one. So, right. So if you'll accept hatchet numbers, Tom Myers on our board is a very fine attorney and has taken the trouble to read every blessed page of our insurance policy. For that, I am nominating him for sainthood. We're in a church. I think I can do that. And he's really taken the lead on watching the insurance on this. And it's roughly hatchet numbers, a little bit maybe over $14 million. How we get there involves a couple of steps. And then we have $5.4 million business interruption insurance. And the business interruption insurance, and Craig and Tom have way more expertise on this, so I'm going to listen very closely for any hissing of errors. But one component is any expenses we incur in terms of lost revenue, lost profits, lost deposits, and the like. Another component is the interim operational losses we have to pay staff for a club that right now we can't use. And then the third, and again, I'm in hatchet numbers, the third step would be any extraordinary expenses that we have to incur to try to get the club back operating to some degree, like temporary kitchens and like that. Extra. Okay, so it doesn't have to be extraordinary, but extra expenses. So there are at least 3 different eligibility things for the business interruption insurance. And obviously, as an insured, we want to try to make sure that we get the maximum benefit out of that. And we're looking at that very closely. We did have some good news this past week. We do have in hand a check from Allianz for $472,000 as the initial payment on our business interruption. That is for the remainder of the month of January and the month of February. So about seven weeks worth. So that is just the very first payment. The plan is that we're going to ask Allianz to consider just going ahead and surrendering the entire $14 million and change, whatever it is, on the property insurance policy, and to ask them to go ahead and surrender the remainder of the $5.4 million. There's a lot of that going on. Our claim is obviously massive. I don't think anybody on our side of the table believes that the insurance will be anything close to the actual damage we've sustained. So that request is going to be, we just made that decision Thursday night, so I anticipate that communication will be going out in the coming week. And if that does happen, of course, we'll let you all know. We do not intend at this point to engage in an adversarial relationship with Allianz. They have thus far been pretty cooperative, but we are going to go ahead and ask that question and see if we can expedite the closure of the file. The last thing on the insurance front, even though we have 5 attorneys currently on the board, And Tom has put an enormous amount, again, qualifying him for sainthood, for reviewing the insurance policy. The board has decided that we want to look at engaging insurance coverage counsel, not just for the possibility that we may have a fight with the insurance company. I'm hoping we don't. But also to make sure that we have another set of expert eyes looking at the overall insurance coverage, looking at the overall claim, and making sure that we can assure all of you we didn't miss anything. So that decision was also just made Thursday night. So that, any questions on, Bob, did I cover everything for you on insurance? Okay, I got a thumbs up, thank you. Yeah, 2 questions in the back.
So my question would be, in addition to the insurance, what about legal counsel in terms of who's going to represent us in a claim against SCE? What about what about if we were to claim that to, let's say, rebuild the club is $35 million, insurance is going to pay us 15 in round numbers, so our claim against SCE is going to be $20 million.
Well,
Who's taking that fight?
I'll be happy to come to that right now. That was going to be my next topic. Could I just, there was somebody behind you, I think, had a question on insurance, and I'll come back to Edison.
I just had a question.
Yes.
Does any multipliers apply for a natural disaster in this case? Has that been asked? Like multipliers where it increases in the case of a natural disaster?
I don't think we're aware, I don't think there's any multipliers that we have seen in the policy or that our broker has notified us about, no. So that 14 and change and the 5.4, that's all we think we have. But again, we're going to have an insurance coverage lawyer look at this before we close out the claim, whether it's a friendly closeout or an adversarial closeout.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, and you just said it, but I just want to clarify. So you're saying we have something like, round numbers, 14 million in coverage on the building, something like 5 million in business interruption, and something like 5 million in the bank. Is that right?
14 plus 5.4, that's, plus we have, well, a little bit less than 5 in the bank now, don't we?
I'm just rounding, hatchet numbers, as you say. But is that right? So something like 24 million plus potentially 2 million from the SBA loan.
Well, the 5.4 chipper is not in the bank yet.
No, I didn't say in the bank. I know insurance coverage that we're trying to get.
Yeah.
14 million rounded, 5 million rounded. As of Thursday night, you're going to make the request that they just pay that out. But the numbers we're thinking about is 14 and 5.
Yes.
And that 14 includes the personal property and the building and all that, right?
And code upgrade, yes.
Okay, I'm just trying to get the numbers on my head.
Yeah. And then chipper, of course, as you know, we had 5 million, not quite exactly, in the bank. Of that, we've tried to keep 1 million for a contingency reserve, which I think, given the circumstances, is really still a good idea. Then that leaves us about $4 million that we had set aside for the kitchen and club capital improvements. So that certainly is in the mix.
Yeah, I'm just trying to sort of get the numbers in my head.
Yeah.
14, 5, and 5, whether you hold $1 million on the side or not. And 2 million possibly coming SBA.
Yeah. Thank you. We have had sub-club members write to Craig and I, not many. We have had a few people suggesting that as equity members, it's our club, it's our property, and we should be charging full dues through the whole process, in part to avoid borrowing. Now, we're not proposing that, but I just want to give you an idea of the rainbow spectrum of opinions we're getting as a board. So thank you, Chipper. I hope that helps. Okay, so any other questions on insurance before I go back to the Edison topic?
Just a quick one. You said you retained counsel to represent us?
We have not retained counsel. We have decided to search for insurance coverage counsel.
Okay. And they're not going to take a piece of the action if we sign up with them?
These lawyers charge hourly for their work. They would not take a percentage of our insurance.
Okay, thanks.
Chris Horn had, I think, a question on the insurance. Row 3.
So we all know that we were underinsured. We know that the insurance policy came through Bolton, through Ken Turknet. the length of my knowledge stops there. I can assume that Ken and Craig came to the board with proposals. Do we know how, question number one, do we understand how we got to such a crazy low number? And question number two, is Ken Turknet providing any assistance to us since he's the one that wrote this policy for us?
Well, I did provide this information, I think, in my first or second email to all the members about this topic, because that was the first thing we all wondered is, wait a minute, if construction costs are skyrocketing, how did we come up with $14 million of coverage? At the time, the $14 million was derived from, and this is according to Ken, there's a construction cost estimating software that they used. That was not anticipating a community-wide disaster where construction costs would skyrocket the way they apparently are. At the time, the information that was had was that was not under-insuring, that was a reasonable amount of insurance. The amount of insurance also had to be approved, I understand, by the insurance company. So we had no indication, we had no reason to believe in 2024, the last time we renewed, that this policy was inadequate. Now, is it inadequate? Yeah.
Yeah, and I did read your note on it. I just felt it pretty incomplete. If you do even $300 a square foot math back then, the numbers don't add up. Just when you look at property, I mean, the kitchen alone, the appliances, all that, the numbers before the pandemic or before the crazy surcharge now that we have are still not adding up. So I did read your note, but it's not penciling to me, because 28,000 square feet at 300 plus all of the interior furnishings comes up to, in my math, quite a bit more. So either I'm doing my math wrong or somebody else did their math wrong.
Okay, are we? Yes, go ahead.
Were multiple insurance companies consulted on this? Was it an open bid, or was it just this one company?
Yeah, they usually go out to about 15 or 20 different insurance companies.
All right. Given our current burn rate, how long of a, this is from Scott Patridge, who's on our finance committee. Given our current burn rate, how long of a runway does the 5.4 million get us in months without including any other cash reserves? Scott, that is a it depends answer, because it depends. Oh, our treasurer would like to answer that question. Sorry, Rebecca, I can't get up. I mean, I could, but I'd scream.
Hi, Rebecca Stokes, treasurer. Roughly speaking, 36, 38 months, given our current estimates for fixed expenses and payroll, so, and no dues. That's the answer to the question.
Thank you.
Would I be able to take a look at the clause regarding the coverage on business interruption? Because I know from a different board that I sit on that's in a very exactly same position, we've been told by our broker and the claims advocate there that the business interruption and extra expense bucket can be used toward rebuilding based on the language of the policy. So that's just something to consider in terms of establishing what would be an appropriate burn rate for the club, considering we have no campus to operate out of, that it may be in the club's best interest to have a very, very low burn rate so that we can preserve that bucket of money and apply it toward the cost of a rebuild. So if I could get a copy of the policy, I would actually love to look through that. And this is Noelle Miner, by the way.
Okay. And Noel, we're an attorney, but so you have a legal background. So just so the audience knows. Okay, great. Yeah, we'll look into that. As I said, we're going to have coverage counsel. So we're going to have somebody who specifically, works with coverage interpretations look at that for sure. But okay, Dan Thine had a question. I was told by a board member that a, quote, state-of-the-art, close quote, metrics were used to determine how much we needed for insurance. If this is true, could we take legal action? There is precedent. Construction costs have gone up since 2020. This is not due to a recent run-up on cost due to fire. Well, I've relayed to you what I know about how the coverage number came up. I know that as a board member, the cost of our property insurance had been a real big problem for all of us in our budget in recent years. So I don't know that our broker did anything wrong. Our broker is a member, so that's really all I've got. Okay. Edison issue. Am I okay? Okay, I don't see any other questions. The Edison issue. We have been closely watching the Edison issue since pretty much day one of the fire. We are well aware, how could you not be aware, that there are dozens of law firms inundating us with everything but leaflets coming from airplanes with their advertisements for fire loss representation. I have been contacted by probably 10 different members and or law firms asking for the club to hire them for pursuit of a claim against Southern California Edison. I'm saying the same thing to every single person that refers me to a law firm or a law firm. I said, please send me your proposal. Interestingly, I think we only received one proposal so far, even though I keep saying, please send us your proposal. Tom Myers, who is, again, a lawyer on our board, has agreed to take on the monitoring and the collection of attorney fee agreement proposals. We are not yet feeling like there's any need to make a decision on that yet. It would be nice if we had the official determination of origin from the Los Angeles County Fire Department, which I understand will be the determinative decision in who or what is responsible for this particular fire. The board is aware that the statute of limitations is a long ways away. I hope none of you have ever had experience with mass tort claims before. I have as an attorney. These type of fire losses, ordinarily all the different lawsuits are coordinated. They're not consolidated. They're coordinated by the judge who will have the misfortune of being assigned all these cases. All the different law firms will be put into the same bucket. They'll all have their calendars consolidated. There will be a steering committee appointed of a certain number of law firms that will be the points of communication with the judge. And the dozens of law firms that are not part of the steering committee will basically watch what the steering committee does. I saw during the Woolsey fire, this is exactly how it happened in the Ventura County court system. When a settlement was finally negotiated, it was negotiated between Southern California Edison Council, the steering committee, and the help of a professional mediator. So whatever attorney we hire, we will certainly want to hire somebody who is excellent. We have had excellent firms already referred to us, but we have no idea how long that process will take. We don't know how much the ultimate recovery will be, and we have no assurances yet that there will be a recovery. So we are watching it closely. If I was a Las Vegas odds maker, I would put my money on that we probably will join everybody else unless there's some specific reason not to. But there's just no rush in doing that right now. And we cannot budget. This is sort of the elephant in the room type part of this question. We can't budget our club recovery on the outcome of the lawsuit because A, we have no guarantee it's going to come in. There's already been some discussion you may have read in the LA Times this morning or yesterday morning about the state fund that was established by the California legislature some years ago for exactly this type of situation where there's a massive mass tort claims against a single utility provider and how much money is in that fund and the likelihood that fund could be exhausted. by this. Is there a possibility we could even wind up in bankruptcy court? Well, the fund was created to try to avoid that. But there's a lot of uncertainties. So I say all this to explain why we cannot, within our fiduciary duty to our club and our members, plan on that money as any component of this. So me personally, how I look at that is if that does happen and if that ship comes in, that may be a wonderful blessing to all of us. It may wipe out borrowing that we probably are going to decide to do, but that's how we're looking at it right now. So we're going to keep you closely informed, and if and when the board does make a decision to hire one of the firms, we'll be announcing that, sure. Bob, you've been in the back. Go ahead.
Yeah, just anecdotally, with that Woolsey fire anecdote you just told, what was the time between filing a claim and that settlement? Was it years? You know, how long was it?
I haven't looked back at my 2 client files that participated in that. I had one client that got in the Woolsey fire claim very late in the process, like at least a year or more later. And it was maybe a year or 2 beyond when they signed up. So you could probably easily check it. In fact, I may do this just out of my own curiosity to refresh my memory. I think it was years between the fire and the settlement and the funding of the settlement. So, I'm sorry? I'm so sorry. There's an echo or something.
After the Tubbs fire in Santa Rosa, when they sued PG&E, I think it was 3 years roughly.
Okay.
By the time they were able to close out the $1 billion of lawsuits.
Yeah, thank you. And a claim of this magnitude, to me, that would be relatively quick. So, all right. We good with the virtual attenders? Why hasn't the club, who's the question from? Just from initials, okay. All right, I'm gonna answer an initials semi-anonymous question anyway. Why hasn't the club established legal and insurance committees to address and research these deep topics? Also, why hasn't the social committee met to help with the heavy lifting? Okay, 2 very different questions. The club, the board has, as you probably know, at this exact moment, we have 5 lawyers on the board of governors. We have asked Tom Myers to watch the Edison issue and also to help as a sort of liaison in reviewing the insurance coverage and talking with Craig about the coverage and Diane. We do intend to hire insurance coverage counsel, as I've said, which is, to me, far more valuable than an insurance committee. Maybe the board will go in a different direction and establish an insurance committee as well, but it seems to me the best thing would be a high-powered insurance coverage attorney. As far as a legal committee, the other decision that the board made is instead of forming a legal committee per se of club lawyers who would be advising the club unofficially and then thereby putting their errors and omissions potentially in play, the club is going to look to hire a club general legal counsel, somebody who can review the various big contracts that are going to need to be reviewed in the coming 18 months, 24 months. We have talked about forming a legal committee, but I think at the end of the day, we felt that it would be much more stronger protection for the club to actually have an outside vendor, general counsel attorney who's experienced in advising nonprofit clubs. Social committee is meeting on Thursday, and since the question brings up the social committee was instrumental in our meetup last Sunday at All Saints Church, from checking us in to serving the drinks and soft drinks. They really made it happen and really backed up Ashley in a major way. So grateful to the social committee as one of many committees that's finding ways to help our club community. Okay. Next major topic, we, as you know, we've been talking for several weeks now about the formation of a Restoration and Recovery Committee. The board has received an initial round of expressions of interest from a wide variety of backgrounds. Our invitation for volunteers focused primarily on those with direct experience in design, construction, and development. The board went through the initial volunteers and then went ahead and issued a further invitation to all our membership for further volunteers. I think we got maybe another dozen applications from a variety of backgrounds in response to that. On February 27, the board arrived at a list to submit for member input. Two of the applicants have withdrawn their names from consideration. But tomorrow, an announcement is going out to all our members announcing the following list that we are submitting for member consideration, along with basically a poll that we're going to ask you a couple of questions about the rebuild itself and also about the group of nominees. And I think we're going to provide background information on each of them as well. So in no particular order, not even alphabetical, here are the folks that we're going to be submitting to you all for comment and input tomorrow. Antonio Rubo, Chipper Pastrone, Nicole Fahey, Noel Miner, Omel Nieves, Christian Hart, Mark Ganji, Matt Harrell, Matthew Krapman, and Phil Necker. We're going to ask you all to please review this ASAP because we really need your input by Saturday, March 8. The board is meeting again on March 9, and among other things, we're hoping to review your input and then make the final decisions on the R&R committee on that Sunday evening. Any questions about that? Yes, actually, I was going to get to the other groups. But we can jump that, not a problem. Like I said, we had an amazing amount of volunteers of help from people in the legal field, people in the finance and lending industry, people with kitchen design experience, people with interior design experience and finance experience, heavy finance backgrounds, in addition to our existing finance committee. We're still trying to figure out what this is going to look like with these other volunteers. We have groupings of names of folks who have, not strictly speaking, construction backgrounds or development backgrounds, but are in these other groups of expertise. We want very much to avail ourselves of that volunteer help. We're not sure if they're going to be blended in at certain phases in the process to the R&R committee, or whether we'll form other ad hoc advisory committees to the board. But we do see the probability of a finance group in liaison with the finance committee, a kitchen design group for that aspect, and an interior design group. We didn't specifically form a legal group, even though we've probably had volunteer emails from maybe 6 lawyers in our club who aren't already on the board, but we have those folks in waiting too if we have something that they could help us with. So if you are in those fields and you volunteered your services and I didn't read your name, that is not a rejection of you. We are definitely saving your names for these later phases in the project where we're going to very much need your expertise. So unless you tell us not to, you'll be hearing from us in coming quarters. Okay. What is the R&R committee going to do? Well, initially we're seeing at least several deliverables that we need from the R&R committee. You've already heard us reference the decisions about demolition. The demolition is the decision, do we go with a private company? We've received 3 bids. We have a 4th coming in, or maybe the 4th just came in. But ultimately, we expect we'll have 4 bids in hand, 1 really high bid and 3 pretty competitive bids. Do we go ahead and use them? All 3 of those bids are significantly over the $250,000 insurance limit that we have for demolition. But do we wait for the Army Corps of Engineers? You heard that the supervisor's office, this is literally just this morning, I think, breaking news, that they're going to look into that for us and try to find out, can they get more information? The issues, expenses, and risks involved and considerations like how much foundations are removed, how much are saved, this is something we really feel like we need the R&R committee on, even though we urgently want to get this going. So this will be one of the very first things we're going to ask the R&R committee to look at is look at the demolition, look at the proposals, help us decide, do we wait for the Army Corps, do we go ahead and engage our own or not? This is a critical path item in terms of our ability to return some semblance of the campus to use. Along with the golf course safety factor, we've got to have the campus safe, and before we can get the campus safe, we've got to get the rubble, the debris, the ash, and all that dangerous stuff out of there so we can fence it off with some good solid construction fencing and then create some safe paths of travel at such time as we're able to use our courts and our pool again. Did I see a hand in the very, very back?
So over the 250.
We got the mic coming your way. Go ahead.
So over the 250, are we talking $1 million probably, or 750 to $1 million?
The bids, the
Okay. So it's close to the 250. It's not, okay, cool.
yeah, but they're over the 250. Okay, there's some general questions. We'll keep going. All right. Another thing that we're going to be asking advice from the R&R committee is getting to another element of the critical path of restoring our club, and that is the so-called programming phase. In the design world, programming is where you sit down and the designer asks you, the client, what spaces do you need? What rooms do you need? What functions do you need? That's they call the programming phase. So we have, I think, 7 firms who have submitted their names or have been referred to us. We've already got a couple of proposals for the programming phase. We want the R&R committee to be advising the board and interviewing and helping us select the design firm to pursue the programming phase. We've decided to separate the programming from the actual design. The big expense is going to be in the design. Another issue where the board, again, I've seen some emails from a lot of you that have circulated and made their way to my desk. We're thinking with all of you more than I think people realize. Many of you have been asking, well, don't we need a project manager? And the board has been asking the same question. So we made the decision on Thursday night that we want to commit to hiring an overall project manager to help us run the project because our management staff are outstanding at running a country club. But they're not trained in how to run a construction project. It's not fair. So yes, we will be seeking to hire a project manager or a project management firm with a lead person. The R&R committee will be instrumental in advising the board and helping on that decision. Yes, go ahead.
Thanks. My hand was up since the last topic, so sorry to go back, but regarding why you would use a private debris removal versus the public, is the main issue the timing, or is the scope of work vary between the public and private?
Yes. It's both. There are issues about timing. There are issues about the scope. There are also issues about the ultimate financial impact and what the county will be charging us versus what the private folks will be charging us. So there are all those factors in play. I think that the bids we have are about 50 grand more than our insurance, $50,000 to $100,000 over our demolition insurance limit of $250,000. So it's not trivial. It's not a backbreaker, and those are all things that will be in the mix when we ask the R&R committee to help make the final decision.
How's it going? Excuse me, I'm Nick Fahey. You were talking about, you said you had something like 7 design firms that you have been speaking with, and people are submitting proposals. How are you going to include the membership in that decision of which firm we're working with and which proposals we're accepting? Are you guys planning on doing surveys and understanding what the membership wants before you make a decision, or are you guys just going to go make your own decision?
I think I can only give you my personal opinion because we haven't made this decision. So if you'll accept my personal opinion, which is simply I will not be voting. I lose my vote on March 23rd when I become immediate past. So maybe I'm the best person to say my opinion because it doesn't matter. I think when the final architectural firm for the main design is selected, I would think that that person or a team will be introduced to the members in some fashion, that the members will have an opportunity to ask questions, provide some level of input on that firm. As far as the programming phase, the input in who the R&R committee recommends, that decision hasn't been made yet. So I don't know.
So the membership's not, yeah.
So that's 1 member input. They comment on people. That's 2 member inputs. And then they're evaluating firms based on their expertise. And the way in which they go about it will be discussed. We don't know at this point in time. But to say you guys, again, we're now, the board, if that's who you guys are now removed from that decision. And it's now very much a member decision. I mean, I can't conceivably see how to go to 490 people on 6 firms. I mean, we could try it. It's certainly possible. I just don't, I don't know how that actually works practically. So I think this is what we're trying to set up in terms of information flow and decision making. So.
To kind of understand what the big priorities are that people want, as opposed to just being like, ta-da!
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that, yeah.
So when we're talking about programming, as you know, Nick, but just for other people, this is absolutely an area, programming. Can you hear me now? Thank you. Programming is an area of industry expertise, and we will be hiring people with this expertise. And programming really involves talking to the membership, different constituencies, different stakeholders, and drawing out in a variety of ways, focus groups, polls, etc., through communication and conversation with people and groups of people. They will draw out from us how we want to use the club, how we see ourselves using the club in the future, and really, this is absolutely forward-looking, and it will be inspiring and informed by our needs, our community, facilitated using their expertise. So it's a huge touch point for the membership, and that goes into how the spaces will tend to look, but most importantly, what are the spaces, what will they be used for? That's programming.
Oh, I have a question.
The board, we are looking at firms to do programming and design. That's the process. That is the programming process. We're going to follow the process, and that's the process. Yes.
So I have a question. So we're going to hire all these experts, which of course is the right thing to do. The legal expertise, the programming, eventually architects and all of that. we've been talking about 2 or 3 pockets of money. So if we're in our minds, we have a certain number, 14 million for property replacement, and we have 5 million for operations, so to speak. Where's the money coming from for all the experts we really have to have before we can even look at, putting a shovel in the ground?
So maybe Young might want to answer this, but part of the construction costs are going to be soft costs and hard costs. So those soft costs are going to be all those consultants, the architects, and all those folks, and the hard costs are going to be the actual general contractors who are going to build it. So that's all going to be put into one lump sum, and hopefully, all the money that we have will be able to afford all of those things. I mean, that's the plan. Part of the programming visioning phase that Rebecca was referencing, out of that, those discussions will dictate how large of a clubhouse we need. And it may come down to, we don't really need 2 kitchens if we set up one kitchen properly. Maybe we only need a kitchen downstairs servicing the members and the pool, if we still have the members area where it was currently. Maybe the members in the pool, and maybe we don't need an upstairs kitchen and we can just have an elevator that will bring the food up from a downstairs kitchen to service the banquets. So there's a lot of different variables that will go into this, and part of that programming visioning stage will dictate whether we have a 28,000 square foot clubhouse or we only need a 20,000 square foot clubhouse. Those are huge differences in cost right there, multi-million-dollar differences. So the programming visioning phase will be a critical factor in determining how this club looks going forward, and it will absolutely involve a ton of different members, different stakeholders, different demographic groups, committees, boards. So you guys will be kept informed along the way.
My wife and I have to leave, so I just wanted to say goodbye to everyone. I knew you were all interested in that. I just wanted to say one thing before we do slip out. The conversation we have had today is really great. And I wanted to really thank the board and Craig and Ashley and everyone for the work you've done. I might suggest for all of us that we have focused on rebuilding and cost and those kind of things, which, as a member, as I think of myself as a member, whether I'm equity or not, as Craig knows, we're old, so we're not necessarily equity anymore. But I would encourage you all to think, let's stop for a second, and the most important thing in any business, and this is a business, is revenue. And we should be focusing very much on member retention. We should spend time talking about these things, but if we don't have enough members to run the club, none of this is going to matter. So I would encourage everyone to think of themselves as a member, but also think of yourselves as an owner of a business. So I own this business, and I have to figure out how I'm going to keep it going. And then look around at everyone else and say, these people are my customers. How am I going to keep them involved in this? So as we think of adding dues back in or anything else, and how we present numbers, we must always think, how am I going to keep people from leaving? And we've lost a lot of homes, members' homes, and we might count them as already lost. So we need to really find ways to stick together and to be as positive as possible. Don't be unrealistic, but because we have to retain each other as members, or we really won't have a club in the 3 or 4 years it'll take to rebuild it. And now, good night. We're going to go watch the Academy Awards.
Wow. Thank you. Yeah. That's why this is so complicated, is we want to continue to have a club that people want to join and want to stay at. And so it's not just so simple as getting the wrecking balls and construction crews in there. We're trying desperately, as I think you've seen, and I think we're gathering momentum in finding different ways for us to be together socially and recreationally. I'm personally hoping that it won't be that many quarters before I can swim in the pool again. And those of you who play court sports can use our courts again and have fun. I'm hoping we'll have some type of food service, and albeit limited, and beverage service, so that we, unlimited beverage service. Drinking responsibly, of course, as we always do. But those are all elements too in keeping us engaged and providing service while we're waiting for the return of our club. And yeah, there's going to be at least one massive member inflection point as we decide what club we want to have back. And that's going to be a very difficult and complicated, multifaceted decision, isn't it? We're going to have 480 opinions, and hopefully 490 opinions. Well, there'll be 10 people that don't weigh in. So that's ahead, and so that's why there's really two tracks here, is trying to develop some interim use of the property, and that's where the demolition is so important. But at the same time, also, what club are we putting back? And that's where we as a family of members, and hopefully sticking together and sharing a mostly common vision, that's where it's going to be so critical. What we don't want is to become fractured and just focused on what I want and what's important to me. Because what's important to me is not what's important to Yang or Rebecca or Liam or Nick or Noel or any of the rest of us, right? So we're all going to have to look at the bigger picture of providing that attractive package. I just did not even do justice to what our friend just said, so let me move on. There's some other very big long-term issues that we're hoping R&R will help us with. The selection of the design firm to ultimately do the design. Even the strategy of what type of contracting arrangement we pursue. Do we pursue a general contractor traditional relationship? Do we pursue a cost-plus relationship? Do we pursue a multi-prime? There are a lot of different contracting relationships that we could pursue to maximize our bang for the buck. And the rebuild committee, the R&R committee is going to be really critical in that. And of course, selecting the construction firm to finally do the rebuilding and working with the design team to make sure that our bids are as close as apples to apples as they can get. That's really critical. Those of you who have had to bid projects before know how frustrating it is to have 3 bids that all for the same amount of money, but all different scopes of work, and figuring out who you hire then. So again, we're hoping to finalize the R&R committee a week from tonight in a virtual meeting of the board. Okay, last but definitely not least, governance update. The deadline to submit additional petitions for board seats is March 8, Saturday. We have received 2 petitions already. So right now it looks like we're going to have 5 candidates for the board. That could change between now and the 8th. There is a recognition that a lot of our members, just like as tonight, may not be able to physically appear at the Elks Lodge on March 23rd. Our bylaws don't really contemplate having membership votes in a hybrid fashion. Our voting, as you know, if you've been here a while, our voting for the Board of Governors has traditionally been by paper ballot. That isn't really going to help our members who can't attend physically. The board is discussing this and trying to figure out how do we handle this and encouraging participation within the boundaries of our bylaws. So if you'll have some patience with us on that, I'm hoping maybe next Sunday night we'll have figured out a path, okay? We're a little bit hampered because we don't have general counsel. We have some of us who have some expertise in the area, but gosh, it would have been great to have general counsel, like if I could go in a time machine and get them on board by next Sunday. Dan Sheehy, one of our governors who is very much appreciated, has submitted his resignation effective March 23rd. The board will, at a future meeting, fill that vacancy. That seat has 2 years left in its term. And the committees are returning to action. The social committee, again, was very helpful. I understand the tennis and pickleball committee has met. I know swimming committee has met. Food and beverage is meeting in a week or two. The 27th, right? Youth has already met also, so that's great. The only committee that I'm just so sad about, and I had a lot of interaction with the long-range planning committee today. You know, we just got the long-range planning committee reformed, and we had just started gearing up. We'd done property walks. We'd done a lot of foundational things that our chair, Vivian Riscalvo, had led that committee in. And then a few days later, we lost everything. So I've communicated with the committee as a whole and have asked them, do they want to try to stay together, or does it make more sense for us to release them so that they can go serve on other committees that have things to do? And the response from the chair and from all the committee members who responded was, yeah, you know what, it's nobody's fault. The board hasn't officially done this, but I'm going to be asking the board next Sunday night to suspend the long-range planning committee for now, because truthfully, the work of the long-range planning committee is going to be taken over by the design firms and our members, and the R&R committee and the board on those things. So that'll pretty much control the long-range future in the next 3 to 5 years, for sure. That's all the prepared updates we had. We have more questions from...
Hi, Squeaky Wheel. So you said Dan Sheever is stepping down from the board, so does that mean there'll be votes on the board for 4? So there's 3 people that were nominated, there's 2 write-ins, but now there's an extra seat because Dan's resigning?
There will be 3 seats elected on March 23rd. Dan's resignation is effective on March 23rd. That vacancy under the bylaws is filled by the board.
Oh, so we're not voting on that? Okay.
No, the members don't vote on that. The board does that.
Okay.
Every so often, we have a board member resign, and the bylaws specifically give the board the power to fill that seat. We've done that in the last 3 years, I think 3 times.
And so did those new members who are elected on the 23rd get to weigh in to that new...
Yeah, good point. Yes, the reconstituted Board of Governors, those 9 persons will decide who will join them. Sorry, it'll be 8 persons will decide who will be the 9th to join them.
Okay, great. And one other one, sorry. You guys, is the board determining if people get to vote in person and on Zoom, or from if they can't make it back in person if they're displaced, or who's making that decision? Because I would encourage everyone get a vote, because this is extenuating circumstances.
Yes, there are extenuating circumstances, but we also are limited in terms of what our bylaws provide for, and our bylaws certainly didn't anticipate this. So the answer to your question again is the board will be addressing this and hopefully deciding this on the 9th, a week from tonight, so that we have plenty of ample notice to staff to get ready for the meeting. Okay. Vivian Riscalvo asks if a member wishes to give up their membership, has a protocol been established? This could adversely impact our reserves. We have not yet addressed that.
For a member to leave and to get anything back, we actually have to sell the membership. So part of the beauty, I suppose, of not charging dues is there's no reason for anybody to leave the club at this point. But if an equity member wanted to leave right now, they would just have to walk away from their membership. There wouldn't be anything in return unless we could find a seller for it, and I don't think we have any buyers at the moment. So the fact that we keep extending the no dues is going to help members who are currently trying to figure out their future and what's going to happen in their life. Just kind of hang tight until that's determined. At some point, if and when we start charging dues again, that will become a much bigger issue.
I've got one right.
Go ahead.
I'm right. With all the conversations on the reciprocity piece that you guys have been investigating, appreciate that. Has there been any conversations with any of the various clubs, especially maybe some of the clubs that have like summer camps, right? Like that was a huge part for us and why we joined. Has there been any talks about like any clubs that might be willing to accept Altadena kids for summer camp stuff?
There aren't many clubs like us. There aren't many clubs who enjoy 60 to 80 kids running around. We are researching that, but right now none of the clubs have offered up their facilities for our summer camp, unfortunately. Yeah, we will have our swim team back this summer. We will continue to try and provide some sort of off-site programming at different parks and things for one-offs. But as far as an actual camp program, unfortunately, I don't see that happening this summer. You know, we do and have established relationships with the clubs. It's just we are so unique and so family-friendly and so kid-oriented. There isn't another club in the area like us, unfortunately.
Yes, go ahead.
I think there's an opportunity to follow up what there's an opportunity to do something that Bill brought up earlier, and that is to manage this, what I would call this interim period. We're focusing right now on what the rebuilt club is going to look like, but there's an opportunity before we get there to do something as a community which would be special given the limited facilities that we will have once the rubble is removed. Yeah, my sense is that if we have a group of people focused on that job, which are not necessarily the R&R committee, but folks that could really put their attention into this kind of Phoenix project, if you like, of just basically getting back together, creating a community, getting back to swim, getting back to tennis and pickleball, and doing the things that way we could create a phenomenal, experience in the short term. That seems to answer a lot of questions about retaining membership and kind of creating this community. Are you planning to leave that to the R&R committee, or do you see an opportunity to focus that in perhaps a more specific way?
Well, there are two distinct paths of activity now, as we've described tonight and in previous updates. There is the trying to restore, as you said, some level of morale building, community preserving activity, like getting our pool back, getting our swimming, our paddle and tennis courts back, having some type of place where we can sit and have a cheeseburger and a gin and tonic. Those are all really important things. Staff has already been working on this for weeks. I know Chad is working on it. I know Craig's working on it. Ashley's working on it. They're looking at things like temporary kitchens. So yes, there's all kinds of research going in now. They're not just waiting for the debris to be removed. So that is a very high priority for us to retain the community of our club experience, in addition to all the off-site activities that you've seen, such as Oakmont this coming week, the Magic Show at University this coming week, this afternoon, the open house at the Jonathan, what? The comedy at the University Club this Wednesday night. So please watch your emails. Please check the club website, because there are lots and lots of opportunities to get together. I was intrigued, our meetup last week, I would have thought we would have had 400 people there, because it's so hard to get us all together, and we had a space that could have accommodated 350 to 400 people, no problem. We had a good turnout. We had a couple hundred folks, maybe 225, but we'll keep doing that. The board is encouraging staff to keep doing that. It's a very high priority. That isn't really understood by us to be an R&R project. That the overall restoration of the physical plant that we call the clubhouse, that is the main focus of the R&R. And yes, question about will there be finance. Dan Thine asks if there'll be a finance person involved in the design team. Yes, in a way, there will be a group of volunteers, including the finance committee, that will work with the rebuild group, because we all need to know, before we all approve a specific scenario of recovery, what's it going to cost us? How long will it take? What will it look like? So all those studies have to be developed before we have anything to present to you. Rebecca, did you want to add something?
Thanks. I'm going to add one comment to Michael's question and then add on to what Kelly was saying about Dan Thein's question. Michael, we have the beginnings of a project plan here, and that shows the various work streams. R&R has a specific work stream to rebuild the clubhouse, and then we're looking currently at member amenities, which is a completely different work stream and group of people working on it. We have about 6 major work streams overall. So in terms of member amenities, right now, we're looking at reciprocal club arrangements. Somewhere out there, there's a button that's big and green, and it says, we can come back on site. So we will be planning exactly what we want to do on site and in what configuration, temporary kitchens, how will we use the pro shop, etc. We'll plan that in advance so that as soon as that big green button is pushed, boom, we can mobilize, set it up, and get together as soon as possible because we all want to be on site with each other. So that's a completely independent work stream and people looking at it from rebuilding. Fantastic. We want member input. So your name has been noted down. Look out. We will call you. I'm not joking. Chris Horn as well. Now moving on to Dan Thein's question about finance and the rebuild. And I'm even going to bring it up a level and just talk about like business continuity, right? We are in a situation, we have to make sure we get through this rebuild, we get back on site, we have member amenities, and at the end of this period, and we don't know when this period ends, we need to have a very, very stable financial foundation. We've always operated with $1 million cash reserves in the bank. In X number of years, is it still $1 million? There will be inflation. What's it going to look like? So we will have a model, a business continuity model, which has assumptions built into it that we can change and that will show us different paths through in terms of, you know, cash flowing the build, looking at member amenities, making some assumptions about food and beverage revenue ultimately, dues revenue ultimately, and we will have levers in this model which show us if we did this, here's how we maintain strength as a going concern and come out the other end. So Dan Thein, the financial aspect of the build will be a critical element of that business continuity plan, and for that we will use the professionals, guidance from the professionals who have volunteered that have construction finance, et cetera, and high-powered modeling skills and financial capabilities. Thanks. For me, sure. I do.
One, do you have a sense of how long, I know this is a really speculative question, so I apologize in advance, but do you have any sense of, just because you seem knowledgeable, how long this is going to take to rebuild after the debris is cleared, caveat. And then 2, have you modeled, into this model, have you modeled out membership attrition? And what is the threshold we can withstand before it becomes too extreme for membership to afford?
Right. That will be a factor in the model. The model is not yet a functioning model.
Copy.
In terms of time frame for the build, I really don't feel, but thank you for suggesting I'm knowledgeable, but I don't have that crystal ball.
Yeah, if you think about it, I mean, every member could leave. I mean, there's no money coming in now. I mean, we have money from insurance. We could raise money and you can resell. You know, at some point in time, these equity memberships will be worth what they were and then in excess. So yeah, I mean, there's multiple ways you could do it. The goal is that nobody leaves. In 3 years, we have our building back, and we're up and running. That's a goal. It's not going to happen in 3 years.
But I guess that's the question.
It's not going to happen, and you're right. There's no answer to your question. We don't know how long it's going to take. I mean, nobody right now. We could say a number, we could say a date, but as time goes, we're looking at this every day, every week. There's, I don't know when I'm going to be in my house. I live 4 blocks from the club. I can't tell you when that's going to happen.
I live around the corner from you.
I know you do. I saw you the morning of the fires. But we're working on it, and we're constantly asking these questions. We're constantly asking if any members do they want to leave? We're constantly looking at these things. It's not as if we kind of put it away and don't revisit it. I think you're asking variables that nobody knows anywhere.
But the reason I'm asking you and Rebecca is because you guys are studying it.
Yes.
And
well,
you're the people of
word.
knowledge at the moment.
Yes.
So I just wonder, is there a threshold where the board says, it's going to be too expensive, we're losing membership, and there's a threshold? And is that going to be, I guess, notified to the membership in advance?
Sure. If it's not a going concern, we have a fiduciary responsibility to tell you it's no longer a going concern. That
Great.
will happen.
Okay.
If I'm part of the board, it'll happen that day. I promise.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. If that were to happen, I have a hard time, my background is in finance and model. I have a hard time seeing that happen.
So just to take a step back, this is Noelle Minor. There's 2 different things I hear going on in the conversation. There was an earlier discussion about the level of member engagement that is going to happen with respect to the rebuild process. And obviously this is a member-owned club. It's a member-run club. We need to make sure that the process is going to engage the many constituencies within the club appropriately about how they want to use the club and what makes the club valuable to them. But we also need to balance that with the fact that time is the enemy in this situation. And the longer a design and building and process takes, the more member attrition we're going to have. So there is kind of a magic spot in managing the right amount of member engagement and making it meaningful, while at the same time not taking so long that we're going to lose a lot of members because they're wondering, what are all these committees doing, and why does the club keep setting up different committees, and are the committees even coordinated? So I think that we don't have those answers here in this room, and I want to give the board a little bit of cover, because these are very difficult conversations to have, and I'm on the board of St. Mark's, and the board over there is struggling with all of these same issues. And so I think we need to really, and I respect the board for the fact that they, reopened the process of selecting people for the R&R committee, and I hope that the survey that they're going to send out tomorrow is going to be reflective of some of the issues that we're hearing in this room. And at a certain point in time, you just got to take a leap of faith that you're going to trust the members that are on that committee, that they're going to be weighing these issues for you. So I just wanted to jump in and make that comment, because I think this meeting could go on for hours if we wanted it to.
Bless you, Noel. Okay, let me handle a couple other questions online. Let's see. David Herndon asks, will the club reconsider doing business with members? The club already has a policy that any vendor relationship with a member must be approved by the board of directors. Staff doesn't have permission to do that right now. Michael Anzarata corrects me. Mike, if you're still on, you got me. He says, I keep hearing we're a nonprofit. I understood we are a not-for-profit. And our CFO is nodding her head, right? Not-for-profit. All right. Yeah, you got me, Mike. I misspoke on that. Has there been, Ann Roy asks, has there been any activity tied to retaining firms for the actual rebuild, discussion about scope, requests for proposals, et cetera? No, we're not even close to that. We're looking in at the programming phase, the initial needs and client desires assessment process of that precedes the design process. And I think that's all the questions we've got from our live stream. We'll check to see if there's any new ones. Yes, I'm so sorry. The lights are. Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't know.
I shall stand so you can see me.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, Matt Nix. I just wanted to say, first of all, the programming that you guys are doing sounds like you're doing a lot. That's awesome. Thank you. You did mention the big event, the gathering in the hall, not being as attended as it could have been, and it just struck me. I was in hearing the summer camp gentleman's comment. I was just thinking about. I think it would be useful for the board to look at the constituencies at the club in a really granular and specific way, just in terms of 15 years ago, the club for me was a place to sit on a pool deck and let my kids run around while I drank wine. That's what it was, right? And now it is a place to play tennis and go to a restaurant afterwards and drink wine. There's a common thing there, but I know for some people, the club is a place where kids go and I don't have to worry about them while I eat dinner, right? And I think that it would be useful because those functions span different committees, be it dining or recreation or whatever, like social or whatever. It does seem like it would be great to hear, or it would be great if the board could articulate at some point a vision for how to bridge some of those things, because ultimately we're doing really specific stuff, right? Like if this is maybe crazy, but like if there was a restaurant in the area and the club was like, hey, it's Altadena night at this restaurant and there's a kids club, right? It's not for me, like my kids are old, but like there are a bunch of people who would be like, that's the only thing the club is for me. The club is just a place where it's a restaurant with childcare. Like that's what I want, right? And I think that one of the things about the large gatherings, they're great in the wake of the fire, whatever, but I don't think anyone was at the club to be in a large room with 400 people. Like that was only on Easter, right? That was that's a specific Easter thing. So, but I just think that even surveying or looking at the club for like how specifically, like what specifically do you want? A restaurant with childcare? Got it. We're gonna try to do that. A tennis and drinking after tennis? Let's try that, right? Because that, I think, is ultimately what's going to keep us together.
Thanks, Matt. And you're right. And if any of you have ideas, suggestions for us, please let us know. We are hampered right now while we have a campus we can't use, but if there are off-site locations, we have the Oakmont dinner coming up, is it Tuesday? Oakmont has, I think, designated a dining room. It's an Altadena Town and Country dining room that night. So I don't know about the child care arrangements, Matt, but I get your point. And let's all work together to find... No, I'm not taking it as that. Matt, not taken as a criticism. That's a great observation. Let's make that work. Let's come up with ideas to make... One of the things the board struggled with a couple of meetings ago, I think 3 meetings ago, we had a meeting where for about an hour, we tried to figure out, well, what do the members really want from us right now? And how can we meet those desires? And we got lost. So we need to hear from all of you. You're seeing the different rainbow of choices that Ashley and Craig and Chad are coming up with for all of us, from taking over a dining room to tennis courts at Annandale to different comedy nights and different things. Please let us know what resonates with you, and if you have ideas, please send them in. If we can make those happen, if it's something that is well attended and resonates that we're missing, that's where we need to know from everybody. Because we can't, the 9 of us on the board, it'll be 10 after March 23rd, but the 9 voting members of the board and the 6 employees that we have can't figure out everything on our own. We need to have some guidance and input from all of you. We gotta, to make the club survive, we have to work together. That's so obvious, but so true. Do we have any other questions, Ashley, or did we come? Okay, the one thing that I hope you've heard tonight, and you will continue to hear from this board, is we tell you what we know, and we tell you what we don't know. And we're not shy about admitting that there's certain things we're still working on, and we're going to continue to work on it. I bet if we had a contest to see who loves the club more, we would have a brawl breakout because everybody thinks they love the club more than the next person, right? So thanks for coming tonight. I hope it's been a profitable 2 hours for all of you here at the Westminster Church and those of you online. And we will see you again. Our next town hall will be part of our annual meeting, so I encourage you to come to the Elks Lodge on March 23rd at 4 p.m. And you all know where the Elks Lodge is, right? Okay, good. Thanks for coming, everybody. Take care.